Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another installation of And Still Boxing. I'm your host, Guy Mckinnon, and we are here to discuss the matters that have occurred on the weekend. Let me tell you this. It was meant to be the weekend for boxing. All this star power lined up in New York City and bloody the big old square there. It was all good to go. We had Garcia. We had Teofimo Lopez. And we had the big dog himself, Devin Haney. And it was meant to be this star power drawing everyone together. But let me tell you, it turned out to be a bit of a stinker, didn't it? It turned out to be, honestly, a little bit of a letdown. And a lot of boxing fans are quite upset. Not only that big Riyadh season there in New York City, a day later in Riyadh itself. Big old Canelo Álvarez fighting William Scull in the most boring fight I've ever seen in my life. Arguably, the Devin Haney one was even worse. Very, very disappointing. But let's break this down and get to a little bit more detail and see why this has been so disappointing. And these fighters, I feel like if you're big Turkey Al Sheikh, that you don't want to be associated with him. I think he's chosen the wrong people to get around, to be honest. So this first one, Devin Haney versus José Ramirez. Now, I've been saying for a long time, and even Farid Samad, who's even trained Haney for a little bit, who came on the channel, he said Haney's a bit of a pusher with a jab. I think Haney's overrated. I think this fight was a legitimately boring fight, and it's reflective in these stats. Devin Haney himself threw a total of 224 punches over that whole 12 rounds. 224. Punches landed 70. Jabs thrown 132. 2/3 of his punches were jabs. Jabs landed 25. And power punches landed 45. That was that jab to the body. Jab to the body. Could not be any worse. It was like sub 500 punches that were hit or thrown, full stop. And that's not including hitting within that. And that's José Ramirez included. Now, I would expect José Ramirez to come in with a bit better of a fight plan, if you will, to come in against Haney. But Haney, honestly, I really think that Haney, best described, is a poor man's Mayweather. He jabs, he gets out, can't even talk the trash that Mayweather used to. And it's a boring fight. All right, that was meant to be his big comeback fight after, the whole PEDS thing with Garcia. But man, I tell you what, this guy has some PTSD from his last fight. It's probably something to do with Garcia. PTSD for sure, because he was running. Jab, run. Oh, to the body, run. Fans don't want to see this, all right? I want to be the voice of the fans here on And Still Boxing. And this is not what it's meant to be about. Sure, I enjoy a great boxer. I enjoy even a Mayweather, perhaps. All right, even though I think his style was on the more boring side, okay? But I enjoyed he's a fantastic boxer. In this spot, it's not even the case. All right, it's just boring. 220 punches thrown? Disgusting. All right, so I'm going to go into the Garcia thing when Garcia did lose to Rolly, okay? I guess all we're looking at here is the potential for that revenge, repeat or revenge, and that revenge clause type of thing that they have going on with Garcia and Haney, is that they both fought a terrible fight. And like I said, I'll go into Garcia in a second, but they both fought really boring fights. I mean, Garcia lost, and their next fights are probably going to be maybe against each other. They both need to come off wins and more convincing wins. But this was meant to be that big marquee New York City fight. Garcia, Haney, Teofimo Lopez, star power. I mean, it didn't quite live up to the hype. Now, furthermore, Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero. Now, on paper, all these fights sounded interesting. But Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero, I thought had the most potential of being actually a really good fight. All right, so we know, and I want to know if you agree with me, but I don't think Ryan Garcia is very defensively responsible. All right, Rolly Romero isn't quite as much, all right, as well, defensively responsibly. But I've always liked this matchup for Rolly. Okay, so we have ourselves Garcia, who's quite big for his weight division. All right, he's got quick hands, and he's got a pretty dangerous left hook. All right, he's got that left hook on him. All right, but I've always liked this matchup for Rolly. And in my head, I didn't, we were quite busy with a few other projects that we were doing, but I always said to myself, I don't mind that matchup for Rolly. All right, he's strong. He's a vicious counterpuncher. And he has that physical strength, right? Where Garcia often relies on being a bigger man in that weight division, right? To push some people around and weight bully almost, all right? Rehydrate pretty strong. We'll see what happens. But he could not push around Rolly. And Rolly has jumped from strengths to strengths in his last few fights. Yeah, sure, he got done by Pitbull. Sure, yeah, Tank got him. But he's gotten better and better every time. And against Garcia, who I think only has speed, got some quick hands in that left hook, it was never going to be a fantastic matchup and obviously defensively questionable. Now, one thing which I've always thought about with Garcia is that if he did not have that TikTok fame, that social media pull, that I don't think he'd be at this level. I don't think he would have made it through the grind like all these other fighters. I feel like he had quick hands. He was a handsome man, social media darling. But if he didn't go through that grind, I don't think he would be here. All right, he's been exposed a few times. Yeah, he got Haney. Haney's boring. All right, Haney's not as good as we think. He's not Mayweather, and he got done by him. But now it's going to put. And as Rolly said, he's fucked the whole Riyadh season. Everything they want to do, all right? They put all their money into Garcia, they put their money into Haney, and he's just really thrown that into the bin, all right? Ironically, with this fight, that Garcia was knocked down by that left hook. Then after that, he fought so cautiously. Cool. It's been a year. He doesn't have his peds on board, but it's not that stylistic matchup. It wasn't a great style matchup, all right? He couldn't bully Rolly, and Rolly came in. Now, I want to give some stats from this one, all right? Almost equally as boring. If it wasn't for Rolly getting that knockdown, but punches thrown, 207 by Ryan Garcia, Puch, and Rolly was chasing him around and viciously counterattacking. If he was probably relying more on that counterattack and Ryan Garcia wasn't attacking, well, it doesn't offer that opportunity to throw as many punches. Ryan Garcia threw 207 punches. Rolly Romero, 267. All right. Jabs landed, hardly any. Garcia, 47. Rolly, 36. And they're thrown. It's just such a... I'm not going to go down the numbers. What I'm saying is that those punch outputs for such a marquee fight, they're disgusting. All right, it's not what we want to see. They might have had a contract already on the side saying, don't worry, you just get through this guy. Regardless, whatever happens next, you're going to get that matchup with Devin Haney again. Because that's the only way that can explain this disgusting punch output for such a big event, such a big Riyadh season event right there. All right. Next, a video that we've done only recently as well, where I wasn't defending him, but I was trying to lay down and be as objective as I could. And that's Canelo Álvarez and his fight a day later after this big New York City event, Star Power, where he was going to go and fight William Scull. All right, I said in the last video that this is not going to be a big world breaker. Wow, what a matchup. All right, and God, I was right. Punches thrown. Canelo Álvarez, 152. Total punches. William Scull, 293. Again, this punch output is disgusting. Power shots to the head by Canelo Álvarez is 8. This guy's meant to be pound for pound. This guy's meant to be right up there. He's versing a guy that's unknown. All right, and I've got a few thoughts on that, but I'll go over that in a minute. So, this is Canelo Álvarez' first fight in a 4-fight deal, big Saudi deal worth over 400 million USD. 100 million a fight. Killing it, brother. All right. A few other observations which I also want to make before I go a little bit more detail is that, and this is more in broad terms about about these fights, these Saudi fights, that I've observed that everything seems to be undisputed. All right. Once upon a time, you get an undisputed once every 10, 15, 20 years. All right. And sure, you can say he's put in the money, he's making these fights happen, but I think they're losing their luster a little bit, where it's some of their appeal, every other fight seems to be undisputed. All right. William Scull, for example, he picked up the IBF, I think it was, that Canelo relinquished earlier in the year. Picked it up with a nothing fight. And then Canelo said, well, I'm going to try and get that again. So it's another undisputed fight. And they, it's the way they do it. They're like, this is an undisputed fight. Everyone, everyone look it up. Everyone come watch it. Wow. And Canelo's just already undisputed. So he's picked up the IBF, left behind. Now, if I'm going to liken this also as a quick side note, I'd like to compare this to Mayweather's Showtime deal. So Mayweather signed the 6-fight, $200 million deal back in like 2013 or something with Showtime. All right. And what we saw with that is that he fought a lot of low risk or well-timed big names. All right. This fight is exactly like that. Canelo right now, I'm afraid, is fighting just for the money. He's not for boxing anymore, I don't think. I feel like he just wants to get a couple of names in there and all good. Start printing money. So going to leave that $600 million USD, $400 million USD on the table. No way. He's after a brand. He's after more than legacy. The man's a proper businessman now. All right, this first fight, William Scull, I'm going to liken it to Mayweather's first fight with the Ghost Guerrero. Yeah, sure, he was okay. But he wasn't this groundbreaker. It wasn't the Manny Pacquiao that we wanted to see. And if I'm going to liken it again to this is not the Benavidez that we wanted to see Canelo fight. All right, it's William Scull. No one knew him. All right, if you're going to fight somebody, all right, his management, here's the suggestion for you. It's one of two things that you should do. It's either going to fight a big marquee fight, Benavidez, Better Beef, or someone like that, or alternatively to that, you fight a bum, all right, that you're going to knock out. All right, we know that the Cuban style and that boxer runner, as Canelo's team likes to put it, is not good for him. All right. He's going to jab his head off. He's going to get away. Sure, William Scull's like, I didn't even land a big shot on me, but he lost every single round, basically. Sure, he's a good fighter. He's fighting pretty well, but he's never going to get knocked out. He wasn't there to engage. Picked up a belt, got a little bit of a payday against Canelo. It says, move along now. All right, he'll probably hear nothing more from William Scull ever again. All right, so that's a disappointment. If you're going to fight someone, fight bums and at least get a knockout. Okay, we don't want to see you against these boxers, against these slick Cuban boxers. We saw what Bivol did to you. We saw what William Scull did to you. All right. Well, didn't beat you, but made you look pretty damn average. Now, if I'm going to say that Canelo is over and he's done, no, I don't think that. But we need the matchups, the fan-friendly matchups. And that's something that we need. We can't have fights where there's under 500 punch output from Canelo Alvarez. All right, we don't want that. We want to see knockouts and we want to see someone to engage with you. That's why the Benavidez will be very exciting and the Better Beef will be very exciting. However, again, I'm starting to more and more every time I start to think now that Canelo is not interested in the big fights anymore, doesn't want to take any more damage. He just wants the money because he has the big name. All right, so historically low output, very boring. Canelo, 152 punches, Scull, 293. That's 445 total, all right, over 12 rounds. Now, CompuBox, I saw this online that it's the lowest ever tracked punch output over a 12-round fight. All right, the previous record was 459 punches, and that was, funny enough, Parker and Wilder. But they're heavyweights. There's like 4 or 5 weight divisions between them. Okay, and we all know that Wilder was having issues, and he went a bit weird for that particular fight. Won't get into that, but they're insanely low punch values, all right, especially for super middleweights. Finally, that's my rant about Canelo Alvarez done. Finally, some actually positives was the Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza. Now, by far, it was the most exciting fight. It felt like an all-action fight out of these New York cards, or even the whole weekend. All right, 1,000 punches thrown. And that is double on the dot. But that's double that of anyone else on that card, or the major fights on that card, or Canelo himself. All right. Honestly, I think this is the best I've seen Teofimo Lopez in a long, long time. All right. Obviously, he's lost to Australia's own George Kambosos, and even since then, we're not sure if we'll ever see the true Teo that we saw against Lomachenko. But I tell you what, on this particular fight, he was fighting crisp. He was controlled. He looked strong physically. He was crisp. Those counter punches were lightning, sharp, accurate. Great counter punching. And that was the best fight of the night. But even then, 1,000 punches is not a big punch output. All right. For example, Eubank and Ben had 1,500. Okay. 500 more punches again. That's 50% more. All right. And that was an amazing fight. But that's the closest we came to, like, say, a normal, entertaining fight out of the whole thing. What we did see was Lopez did call out Boots. All right. Boots Ennis. Now, that would be a very intriguing fight. Boots is an amazing boxer. It's probably closer to Mayweather than we do have with Devin Haney. Old no punches Devin Haney. Jab, jab, run Devin Haney. All right. Boots, I think, would be a great fight against Lopez, especially this Lopez that we saw. Again, with a Lopez, we don't know which one will rock up. Sometimes it's that crazy one, I'm going to knock your head off like we saw with Kambosos, or sometimes a really interesting boxer, the strong counter fighter. I don't know. And I think that's a very, very interesting matchup that I would love to see in the near future. The best fight that we saw, ironically, over the weekend was Inoue versus Cardenas. He got dropped in the second round, then he came back brawling. What a fight. And that wasn't a Riyadh season fight. All right, that was, I think, a top rank. Sitting there trying to get, they don't want to be taken over by the Riyadh season stuff, the TKO stuff, right? They're fighting back. Inoue, fantastic fight. Those other three, disappointment to boxing. All right. Now, I don't think this is Turki Al-Sheikh's fault. I think it's just these guys and maybe something that's going on. I have to probably delve into it more and have a bit more of a think about it. But what it seems to me that these young guys, a bit of superstardom get to their head. They're not fighting good fights. It's embarrassing. It was embarrassing for boxing. You put on such a big pedestal and they didn't have these fights and they're doing sub 500 punch outputs. Man, you can see why the UFC is going to start out doing them. Do better. Be entertainers. This isn't about sport. This is about money. This is about entertainment. Right? This is probably closer to WWE than anything else. You have to understand this. And no one wants to see it. Sure, there's going to be a minority of people that want to see that jab, jab, punch, jab, jab, clinch, get out of there, run, run, run. Not me. I have a small appetite for it, if it's done well, but not in this time. There's a bit of hatred, but all I want to see is Australian boxing, world boxing get better and better. And events like this do not do it. Congratulations on all the wins. Rolly Romero, good work, fantastic. Teofimo, I want to see more from you. I'm Guy McKinnon. This is An Angry and Still Boxing. And until next time.
If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the channel for future content.